Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajmain. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Respected brothers, sisters, friends, and ulama, and all the listeners listening to the radio station. I'd like to first thank the hosts of this workshop. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all the efforts and the khidmat that you're doing, especially in the month of Ramadan. It's not easy being on a radio station and speaking continuously. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all your efforts this Ramadan and every Ramadan that you do and whatever other work that you do, inshallah, out of Ramadan. Ameen. In this 45 minutes or so, what I want to do is I just want to discuss zakat from multiple angles. For the first 5 minutes or so, I just want to talk about what zakat is and why it's so important, what role it plays in our lives. And then I want to spend 10 minutes or so discussing personal zakat calculation. Then I want to spend 10 minutes discussing zakat on investments, and then 10 minutes on business zakat. Okay. So when we think about and discuss zakat, what is it, right? And why is it so important? One thing we have to understand, zakat is not the same as charity. The way we understand charity to be, sadaqah. Charity, the way we treat charity is something which is optional. You give how you want, when you want, to whom you want, as much as you want, as less as you want. Zakah is not like that. Zakah is fixed. So when we pay zakat, we're not doing any favor to anyone. Rather, we're fulfilling an obligation, a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to pay zakat if we're eligible to pay. And that's why I always say charity begins at 2.5%. Right? Charity begins at 2.5%. We need to understand this, because if we don't understand this, many of us, we suffice on zakat as our annual charity. Whereas if we read the lives of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the lives of our pious predecessors, they were ones who would give so much sadaqah, like throughout the year. And in Ramadan, they'd be giving more sadaqah. Zakat was a given. Zakat was a given. Zakat is part of your identity as a Muslim. Right? Zakah is your identity. It's not something which you give optionally. No, it's your identity you have to give. It's like if you want to be part of this Islam family, right? This Muslim family or club Islam, you're giving zakat as your identity. Like salah is your identity. Fasting is your identity. Hajj is your identity. Zakat is your identity. So it's so important we understand that zakat is something we have to do. It's not something that you and I have an option with. And in fact, the money that we pay as zakat, that money doesn't even belong to us. In fact, all the money that we have comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if I pay 2.5% as zakat, I'm not doing any favor to anybody, because the money that's come to me is come from Him, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all He's telling me give 2.5% to Him. And that's why when we pay zakat, the fuqaha and the scholars mention the zakah is first given to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's as if Allah, you're giving to Allah, and then Allah is distributing it to the poor and the needy and whoever receives the zakat. So we're not doing even a poor person or a needy person any favor. In fact, they're doing a favor upon us by taking our zakah. Right? So when we give zakah, we are giving it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the wealth that we have has come from Him. And when we're giving zakat, we're showing gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're showing thankfulness and we're being grateful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all these resources and blessings. Right? It's a form of gratitude to Allah. And beyond that, zakat has so many angles that you can analyze zakat with. Zakat is like a multidimensional prism. From an individual perspective, societal, economic perspective, zakah has an impact on every single dimension. Zakah is so powerful. It's so powerful from every dimension. For an individual, it strengthens your spirit, your well-being, your mental health. When any person does any kind of philanthropic activity, naturally it boosts your spirit. It makes you feel happy, right? And then for your individual spiritual journey with Allah, when you give zakah, naturally your connection with Allah grows stronger. For the community, for society, zakah helps. It builds a togetherness in the community. It builds a community. It builds this empathy for one another. It builds this idea that we need to work together to get to Jannah together. So zakah builds a community, like all other pillars, right? And then for the economy, zakah plays just multiple angles. Zakah allows the economy to flow, because we know that when transactions are not made, the economy starts to tank, and there's a recession that starts taking place when transactions stop taking place. That's why whenever there's an economic stimulus that's implemented by the government, they're trying to stimulate transactions. What zakah does is just that. Zakat stimulates transactions, because my expenditure is another person's income. So my zakat becomes income for somebody else, the beneficiary. The beneficiary will use that money to buy something. And then the retailer will use that money to buy something from the wholesaler. The wholesaler will use that money to buy something from the manufacturer. So what you're doing is zakah has an impact on the entire supply chain, right? This continuous circulation of wealth. And a famous saying, as we all know, that just like how blood is important to the body, right? Blood allows the body to stay function. If blood congeals and stops flowing, a person can die. In the like manner, when money is not flowing in the economy can stumble. So just like how important blood is to the body, same thing is cash flow and money to the economy. And zakah allows cash flow in the economy, because by giving zakah, you're pumping liquidity into the markets. You're giving an injection of liquidity. And according to some estimates, global estimates, the global zakat pool is 300 billion US dollars. That's one conservative estimate. There are estimates of up to 1 trillion US dollars per annum of zakat that can be paid or should be paid. So you can imagine the impact that zakat can have across the world, and how we can really create some kind of sustainable development model for the Muslims across the world, in every part of the world. So zakah is an amazing activity. It's an amazing pillar. And one last thing I just want to mention on this, that zakat is not just done for poverty alleviation, right? Meaning zakah is not just there about feeding people, rather it's feeding people or helping people who are in need, so that the iman and the Islam can become strong. That's why zakah is a pillar of Islam. Why would something be a pillar, right, if it's got no connection with the structure? So how is zakah a pillar of Islam? It's because it's supporting the structure of Islam. How is it supporting the structure of Islam? We know that zakah is only given to Muslims. Why is it only given to Muslims? Is because the hadith tells us that poverty can lead to disbelief. And we know that zakat is all about giving to Muslims. So it's there to primarily support iman and faith, and to support Muslims, because it should never be that a poor Muslim somewhere in the world begins to question his faith, begins to question, Allah written any sustenance for me or rizq for me. He should never doubt the sustenance of Allah. And zakat helps remove such doubts. So zakat has a phenomenal impact from multiple dimensions, as we discussed. Once we've understood all of that, the question is then, okay, how do we calculate zakat? What do we pay zakat on, right? So zakat is not paid by children, first of all, like young children. According to the Hanafi school, which I assume majority of the listeners are potentially adopting and following, zakat is not paid by small children for minor children. There's no zakat on minor children. Likewise, if a person, he lacks mental capacity, there's no zakat on such a person. Zakat is on adults or those who are adolescents. So once you baligh, zakat becomes due upon you. Similarly, you have to be Muslim, and you have to have wealth equaling the nisab, the threshold. Okay, typically that's around, right now the silver nisab is just plus minus 400 pounds, but you can check with your local ulama, and wherever you normally see the nisab, check exactly the amount that is today. So if a person has wealth, money, gold, silver, or these things which equal the threshold, zakah is payable by them. Now, how does zakat work? So, what the first time in your life or whenever, once you hit that threshold, you'll mark that date down. Then you have to see 1 year later on the same Islamic date, the same lunar date, do you have money equaling the threshold, the nisab, of the new date at the year end? If yes, you pay zakat. If no, you don't pay zakat. That's how zakat works. It's a cycle, an annual cycle. It's not based on how much you've earned in the year. Zakat is not based on your profits, right? Because many people ask me this question that, my business has made a loss, right? Um, so should I pay zakat? Zakat's got nothing to do with your P&L account, your profit and loss, right? Zakat's all to do with like your balance sheet, so to speak. It's a snapshot calculation of what you own on a particular date in the year. So you'll wait until the year end, regardless of the fluctuation in wealth. If halfway through the year you had £1,000,000, but by the end you only have £500, you'll only take the end value. Zakah is not calculated on the fluctuations in the duration of the year. It's what you have at the year end. That's what zakat is paid on. So if a person has, on the zakat year end, they have wealth equaling the nisab and the threshold, they'll pay 2.5% on their net figure that they have. If they don't have the nisab, they will not pay zakat. Okay, that's it. There's no zakat for them to pay then. Now, the question arises, okay, we understand that, but what do you pay zakat on as an individual, as a person? So all your money that you have is zakatable, regardless of which currency it's in, regardless where you stored it, where you've saved it. All your money is zakatable. Likewise, money owed to you, if you've lent money out to people, so you gave a loan to your brother, to your cousin, to another family member, to a friend, whenever you've given a loan to somebody, that money, there is zakat on that money every single year. Many people don't know this, but there is zakat on the loan that you've given to people. And you have to pay zakat every single year. You have an option though. You have an option. You can wait until you are repaid the loan, and then pay for every single year that's in the previous years, or you can pay as you go each year before you've even received the loan back. And it's very important here. I just want to mention that in our kind of like culture and society, it's very common to give a loan to one another without fixing any repayment dates. That should not happen. I mean, what you should do, you should have some clear date of repayment. So if you've given a loan to your brother or a loan to your sister, you should clearly agree that you will pay this by 5 years, 10 years. You should not be that you give the loan and say, don't worry, pay me back, whenever I need it, I'll ask you for that. Because economic situations are continuously changing. Everybody's in flux, and there's volatility in the markets right now. We don't know who's, Allah save us, but we don't know how the state will be tomorrow, whether a person can make good on the loan that they've been given. So it's very important that there's clarity. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, one of the longest verse in the Quran is on debt. Allah tells in the Quran that إِذَا تَدَايَنْتُمْ بِدَيْنٍ إِلَى أَجَلٍ مُسَمًّى فَاكْتُبُوا, that if there's a debt transaction, or when there's some kind of lending or a credit transaction, then faktubu, write it down, have the details written down. And therefore, it's highly recommended to have this written down, especially when it's in family members, because from personal experience and what I've seen, when these debts and loans go on for years and then somebody can pass away, that also creates another whole issue, because in these claims, counterclaims, the estate becomes very messy, and at times, Allah save us, it becomes a means of a dispute amongst the family members. So it's very important that we have all this written down. Don't just give a loan and say, pay me back whenever you want, even if you have a good intention. Don't. That's why the famous saying is, live like brothers, but deal like strangers. It's very important to keep that in mind. So lending, loans, there's zakat on there. Likewise, if you have a business, any business, whether you have a shop, whether you're selling from your house, like on eBay, on Amazon, on Instagram, or whichever other platform you're buying and selling things, your stock, there's zakat on the stock that you have. Zakat is paid on the retail price. Okay, so that's important. And then all you do is you take all these values. So take the value of your cash that you have, the receivables, money owed to you, loans, trade assets. And then what lastly, gold and silver. If a sister has gold jewelry, bangles, or a brother has a gold, investment, he's bought some gold as a means of as an investment, or silver, every form of gold that you have, whether you're wearing it, whether you're not wearing it, whether you're using it, whether you're not using it, all of it is zakatable. And so you'll work out and see what the current value of gold is. Typically, the scrap value you can find online, or you can go to your jeweler and ask them what will they buy this gold off you from. Get the value of the gold, and you pay 2.5% on that. So you add all of this: the cash, gold and silver, money owed to you, and then your trade assets. We'll talk about trade assets further in the business in a couple of minutes, right? Add all that up. Any liabilities that you have, so you might be owing, okay, some bills that are outstanding. You can deduct that. You might have a mortgage, right? For whatever reason, Allah save us, if a person has a conventional mortgage, and we shouldn't have conventional mortgages when there's Islamic alternatives available now, so we should be refraining from riba altogether. It's a very, very Allah Akbar, it's a very, very dangerous activity to be involved in, because its harms are widespread across the economy and society, right? The harms of riba are not just at an individual level; it's at a societal level. In fact, at a civilizational level, riba can have an impact upon a civilization, an entire nation, and that's why the global economy today is based on riba, and the harms that it's having globally. We see it. So we should be very, very careful. Every penny of riba supports the system of riba and has a large of a grave impact upon the world. Of course, from an economic perspective, but from a spiritual perspective, because every sin, as Allah tells in the Quran, ظهر الفساد, right? Allah tells us that fasad has become manifest. Why? Right, in the lands and in the seas, because of our actions. Every sin has an output, right? Has an impact, and primarily that's what drives everything. Allah tells in the Quran, فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ. Now, whatever musibah comes to you, فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُم, is because of what you've done. So we need to stay away from this. If we have troubles in our lives, challenges, difficulties, many of us, we have our own problems. Almost everyone has some problem. First thing to do is look at your life. Do I have what sins do I have in my life? Honestly, introspect and look at your own life, and you'll find something there. If you don't find no sins whatsoever, you are steadfast on your salah, steadfast on Quran, steadfast on the fara'id, you're not doing any haram whatsoever, you're fulfilling all obligations and rights, then know that this test is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make you closer to him, right? Whereas if you have sins in your life, then know that this is a means of tathir and purification and a wake-up call. Allah is trying to wake you up and give you admonition so that you wake up and change your life. That's why the challenge is coming. So Allah never punishes a Muslim. That's why the hadith tells us, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ الْأَمْرَ كُلَّهُ لَهُ خَيْرٌ وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ لِأَحَدٍ إِلَّا لِلْمُؤْمِنِ. That how wonderful, how amazing is the affair of a believer, that all of his matters are good for him, right? And so Allah never punishes. A difficulty is never a punishment. There is no such thing as punishing a Muslim. It's all about tathir, strengthening, purification, and helping you on your right course. Sometimes you have to take medication which is bitter, but that is for your own betterment. A doctor is not punishing you. They're just trying to support you. So likewise, we need to be very careful when you're dealing with riba. So if a person has taken a loan, then they can deduct the principal amount up to 12 months. If you have bills that are outstanding or due to be paid, you can deduct all of them as well. So you add all your assets up, deduct your liabilities, and then you pay 2.5% on the net figure. That's your personal zakat done. Let's look at some investments, right? Typical investment. So if a person's trading in shares, okay, if you're trading in shares, then zakat is due. If you're trading, you're buying to sell, right? Your only reason why you're investing in the shares is to sell again. There's no other intention. You're not holding it. You're firmly selling. You're just looking for the right price and you're selling. That's all you're doing. You're not trying to build a kind of portfolio of value and wealth and store your wealth in long term, right? Or you're not looking to grow your wealth long term. Rather, it's just about trading and trying to capture profit and just liquidate the shares. So you're just flipping shares, investing, dipping in, dipping out, dipping in, dipping out in the market. Or it's like even like swing trading to some level and degree, right? You're just with the curves, right? So those who are into trading and understand the different kinds of strategies that are there, just literally is going with the curve and investing and divesting. In that scenario, zakat is due on your entire portfolio because you're just trading. It's like a side hustle or a business for you. Okay. But if that's not the case, rather you're investing in equity long term for dividend income or just a store of value. You don't want to keep fiat because we know inflation is so high now. There's no point keeping savings purely in money anymore, like in fiat currencies, because your inflation is eating up. So you feel like, okay, I won't keep money as money. Rather, I'll invest it in the stock markets to see if I can preserve this long term. And that's your intention. So you're not really trading. It's just more like a portfolio that you're building to store your wealth. In that scenario, zakah is still due, but proportionate to the zakatable assets in the company. Based on a research that I've done at the National Zakah Foundation, I felt that looking at the FTSE 100 companies, we looked at the top 100 companies, listed companies, and 66 out of the 100 had net zakatable assets below 25%. Therefore, we feel that if you take a proxy of 25%, that should cover your zakat liability on equities. So if you're not trading, you can take 25% of the value. So just say your portfolio is worth £10,000. You take 25%, which is £2,500, and you pay 2.5% of that. That will suffice your zakah, inshallah, right? So that's one type of investment. Likewise, if you have rental property, you have property which is leased out, earning rental income. You're not trading in property. It's just a property that's there on rent. Again, zakah is not due on the property. Right? Zakah is not due on property. Only the rental income, of course, that's money. You'll count that as part of your money, your cash assets, and you'll pay zakat on that. Yes, when does property become zakatable? Property becomes zakatable if you have a trading portfolio of property. What do I mean by that? Is your business buys and sells property. So you're in the development or refurb business where the only reason why you're buying property is to sell. Your intention is to sell. It's on the market, it's listed, you're looking for a new buyer, you've done some kind of refurb, and you're selling it on. That is zakatable, okay? But if you have spare properties, you have 5 properties, you're not selling them, they're not listed, they're just there spare, right? You don't know, you're just preserving your wealth again. So that's your personal assets. There's no zakat on that. Yes, however, if Allah save us, a time came where you needed zakat money, right? Your nisab, you had wealth lower than the nisab, then you would not be able to take zakat unless you liquidate these properties if they're surplus. Okay, so that's how these surplus and additional properties impact the zakat equation. And then there's various other types of investments, right? You can look online, and if you have any questions on any particular investments, you're more than welcome to ask. And then business. When it comes to businesses, it's very important that businesses, they deal with zakah in a very prudent way, because many people, the way they practice zakat on businesses is they just take a guess. They'll guess that my zakah is X amount in this pay. Zakah shouldn't be guessed, right? We should make sure we calculate, just like how we take out time to calculate our taxes, right? And make sure that self-assessments, when we're doing a tax return, we make sure that everything is properly done because we fear HMRC. So the same way where we fear HMRC, we should fear Allah. Wallahu ahaqqu an takhshah, like Allah tells us, right? You should be more concerned, cautious, and more fearful of Allah and His obligations and your duties to Allah. So when we are calculating our zakat, be very prudent. In fact, it's ibadah. The time that's taken in calculating your zakat, it's ibadah, it's worship. You're not you're not just doing some like a tax return where it's it's cumbersome, it's burdensome. When you're calculating your zakah, every second is ibadah, every second is worship, every second is getting you closer to Allah, right? Allah is getting happy, is pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you're taking our time to do this. You're showing your servitude to Allah. So uh, sit down and do it properly. How should a business calculate the zakah? Ideally, if you can do a stock take, a stock count that you have, see what kind of stock that you have, the value. You take the retail price. You don't take the cost price of your assets or your trade goods. You take the retail price of your trade goods. You add it all up, do a stock count. If stock count is too difficult and it's costs a lot, which it does, depending on the size of your business, then if you have a system in your business, like an accounting system or software, which tracks the goods and the quantity of goods, you can use that system, the database that you have, which will tell you how much goods you have, what's the current values, like what's expected, what's missing, what's out of stock. You can use your database for your zakat purposes. If you don't have such a system, then another way is what some people do is they use a balance sheet. Okay, the problem with that is you have to make sure that the balance sheet is as close to your zakat anniversary as possible. Okay, that's one thing. Secondly, balance sheets typically are recorded in cost price, so it's historical prices, the way the accounting convention works here. So the prices of goods on your balance sheet will be on historical value, and then also that is many a time it's minus expenses, right? So you have to make sure you make any adjustments. So just say your profit margin is 10%. One way, simple way to do it is you just add your profit margin onto the values of the balance sheet. Thirdly, any kind of disparity between or variance between the amount on your balance sheet. So just say your balance sheet was prepared on the 31st of March, okay? And today is your zakat anniversary. And in the last 10 days, you've received a shipment of goods, or you just received some income, right? Some sales. All of that should be reflected. The adjustments, any major adjustments should be made, right? And it should be added into the calculation. So be cautious of adjustments and add them. And then yes, you can, if you've taken all those precautions, then you can pay your zakat using the balance sheet and work off there. But make sure it's always prudent again to maybe top it up a little to make sure that you've covered everything and there's no mistakes. Right. So that's really the main things when it comes to business. Let's open up the floor if there's any particular questions. So feel free, anybody has any questions, to ask those queries, inshallah, and we can take those queries on investments, on personal zakat, on businesses, on anything to do with zakat. Happy to answer questions, inshallah. In the studio, are there any questions that we have? Yeah, okay, good. There's even to those who are civil servants working in the public sector. So you're working in a state school or the police, fire brigade, NHS, you'll typically have a defined benefit scheme. There's different types of defined benefit schemes. You have the final salary, or you have the career average scheme. These differences are just the way your pension amount is calculated. It just depends on the formulas is different, right? But in essence, when it comes to pensions and defined benefit schemes, there is no zakat on this. That's in the ruling of deferred income. It's just that the employer has guaranteed your income and your salary when you retire. So it's like it's future salary. That's all it is for you. So there's no zakat on that. Yes, there's another pension called defined contribution schemes, which is not prevalent, especially in the private sector, where you can typically choose where you want to have your pension. And this is very important to note here. Those of you who have a choice in the fund where you can invest, make sure that your pensions are in Sharia compliant funds. It's very, very important. Why do I say this? Because think about it. You start working from the age of 20, 25, you retire at 65. That's almost about 40 years that you've been working. If your pension was in haram, if your pension was not Sharia compliant, your entire profit or return on that pension is haram. Okay. That means when you retire and you're 65, in your last years of your life, you'll be eating and consuming haram. And no Muslim wants to leave this world where his body is being consuming haram. Right? How do we expect to leave this world in a state where Allah is happy with us, and in a pure state, when our body, غُذِيَ bil-haram, like the hadith tells us, is being nourished with haram. So it's so, so important. And this is so scary when it comes to pensions, that our money is invested in a halal way. We have a halal pension, we have a Sharia compliant pension. And therefore, when we retire, the money that we're consuming is also halal. And then we leave this world, because your last moment in this world will be the first moment in the akhirah. Okay, understand this. Your last moment in this world will be the first moment in the akhirah. However you want the first kind of entrance in the akhirah, it all depends on your last moment in this life. So you have to secure, and your last moment in this life will be a reflection of your 60 years. So your 10 seconds before death is equivalent to or equal to your 60 years of your life. How you spend your life, that'll all be compressed into the last 10 seconds. And those 10 seconds will reflect your eternity. So it's very important that we do the right things in our life. So when it comes to pensions, make sure it's a halal pension. How do we then calculate zakah? So defined contribution schemes are zakatable. There is zakah on defined contribution schemes. You own the pension, the fund. You own the money there. You bear the investment risk, right? Even if your employee is contributing, he's contributing to your fund, to your portfolio, to your investment. You can typically move it around. And then there's different types of pensions then, okay? It's difficult. Typically what you need to do is you need to look at the fund fact sheet and see the breakdown of assets in the fund by looking at the fact sheet. And that's not easy for everybody, because you need some level of financial literacy. So last couple of years ago, I looked at the top 100 pensions. And again, I developed proxies to help people. So by looking at the top 20 Sharia funds, if a person takes 26% as a proxy, so if you have a Sharia compliant pension, you can simply take 26% of your value of the fund. Right? So just say your pension is worth £10,000. Take 26%, 2,600, and pay 2.5% on that. Okay, that's one. If you have an equity fund, you can take 27%. So same calculation, 10,000, take 27%, that's 2,700, and pay 2.5% of that as your zakat. If you have a property fund where you have a portfolio of property where it's rental property, you can take up to 15% that will cover your liability, because it's property only. If you have like a haram pension, Allah save us, like a mixed asset fund, right? So these fund names as well, you'll see this on your fact sheet. You'll see at the top, equity fund, property fund, Sharia fund. It's there on the fact sheet. So you need to get hold of the fact sheet. If you can't get hold of that, you don't understand that, speak to your HR department. in your workplace. So to speak to the human resources department and say, look, I need to understand more about my pension. What type of pension do I have? Is it a property fund? Is it an equity? Is it a Sharia? And that's where you can also change your pension fund to a Sharia fund. So if you have like a mixed assets fund where it's got everything in it, it's got a bit of bonds in there, equity in there, gold, potentially property, emerging market equities, and all sorts of different things in there. You can take 50%, right? Based on our calculation research, that should cover your zakat liability. And if a person has the worst type of pension from a Sharia perspective, which is corporate bonds, fixed income pensions, which is all just bonds and interest bearing instruments, then zakah is 100% on the entire thing because it's all loans, right? And of course, there'll be some level of purification because there's interest in there as well. So that's the calculation for pensions. If you want to know more about this, you can just Google this, right? Zakat on pensions, and there's so much written online. I've got a presentation on my website, amanaadvisors.com, which discusses all of this. Likewise, if you go to the National Zakah Foundation website, there's information on this there as well, who we did the research. Any other questions, feel free to ask them.
Mufti, there's a question about gold regarding the carats of gold. Which carats is zakat on which carats there isn't?
There's a question: if my zakat date is today and I have an electricity bill on the 20th April, can I deduct? So if the electricity bill is on the 28th of April and today is what, the 23rd, right? Then because electricity works as a pay as you go, if you have like a smart meter and you can tell exactly how much is due now, like how much you've used and how much is due. Like, so for example, you've used 50 pounds of electricity, that much then you can deduct that much today. You can't deduct the full like 60, 70 pounds, right? You can deduct on a pay as you go basis. So if you have a smart meter and you can tell that you've used 50 pounds today, up to today, from the beginning of the month till now, then you can deduct that much. But you can't deduct the full for the next 3 days because that's not consumed, that's not been used. Another question is on gold. Which carats are zakatable? So when it comes to gold, every piece of gold is zakatable regardless of the carat. So if you have carats, 9 carat gold, the 9 carat gold is zakatable as well. If it's 12 carat, that's zakatable as well. 15, 18, 21, 24, whatever it is, right? All of it has zakat. Yes, of course, the price per gram will be different. So it'll be cheaper for 9 carat than 24 carat, the price per gram. So what you need to do is you need to work out how much gold there is and the price per gram of that article. So just say the 9 carat, the price per gram is 20 pounds or 18 pounds. So you'll pay zakat using that figure. You won't take the 24 carat gold value. But yes, zakat is due upon all articles which have gold in there. Another question is on interest in accounts. Do I include that in my assets? No, if you have interest, you need to dispose of that completely. So it's not 2.5% on interest, rather it's 100% of interest. You have to give all of the interest monies away in charity without any reward. You're just purifying yourself and you're disposing that wealth away. So you have to give any interest money that you've accrued, give it away in charity. And I'd strongly urge and recommend any person who has any current account or savings account to change to a Sharia compliant account, to an interest-free account. Or if you want a savings account, if you get a savings account in an Islamic bank, which gives you profit and not interest. Well, someone's asking what are the best Islamic banks. I mean, it all depends upon yourself. I can't say any one Islamic bank is better than the other. I mean, in terms of customer service, from a Sharia perspective, there's no concern. Rather, it's about customer service, what you prefer, access, and your kind of like experience. So there's quite a few out there. You just search online and whatever you feel that suits your needs and your kind of like accessibility and what's easy for you, you're more than welcome to then approach the bank and find out more. And but make sure, I mean, the main thing for yourselves, for everybody here, is we want to stay away from riba as much as possible. We don't want to be part of the riba based economy or the riba system. We want our money to be halal. We want our money to function in the halal economy. We want our money to be pure, because in Allah tayyib, that Allah is pure and He only accepts that which is pure. Very, very important that we keep that in mind. That not only are we pure, we make sure our body is pure when we're performing salah. Our clothes are pure. Everything about us should be pure. Our money should be pure. Anything connected to us should be pure. We should be pure from head to toe. All our wealth, all our clothes, our whole life, all our lives should be pure. That's what Allah loves, and that's how we get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Purity, a life of purity. That's how the angels are pure beings. And that's why when the angels, if a person is pure, then he'll have the companionship of angels. There'll be more angels. That's why even in Laylatul Qadr, when the angels descend, inshallah, it's more likely that the angels will accompany you. There'll be more angels with you. So let's live a life of purity as much as possible. Somebody's asking about student loans. Student loans, I mean, in terms of, like, I'm not going to go into the whole, is it halal, is it haram? Let's ask your local muftis on this particular question. Do you give zakat on it? No. So if you've got a loan, you don't pay zakat on student loan because it's a debt that you have. You don't pay zakat. Yeah, if you've received a tuition grant or like a maintenance grant, that's not your money, right? That's been given to you as a grant, and you own this to spend and use, then there is zakat on that. Or like a bursary or something that you received some kind of award, and there is zakat on that amount, yes, because it's just cash. Last couple of minutes, any other questions, please do feel free to ask those questions. Which nisab should be used, gold or silver? Our ulama, and still in the UK, the typical practices of silver. But there is definitely, I think, a strong argument now to move towards gold, which I personally prefer. And I know other mufti, senior muftis are also inclining towards that. So inshallah, I think sooner or later, there probably be a shift towards gold. But right now, still our ulama are typically going with silver. So inshallah, once the senior muftis and senior ulama advise otherwise, let's continue with silver. I mean, if you have £400, you're only paying what, £10. It's not much, to be honest. Of zakah is £10, right? On £200 it's £5. So £400, £10 is still very feasible. We can still afford to pay zakat. Yes, the question comes about receiving zakat. If a person is struggling, that's a genuine question. Then that's something that you should go to your. If a person is in a genuine desperate situation, then yeah, they should definitely go to the local scholar and state their issues. But yeah, I mean, personally, I still prefer gold over the silver nisab, because it's more practical in this environment where a person may have £500, but they're struggling to survive, right? And they themselves are in need. That's how the setup is in the UK at the moment, and Allah save us, but it doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon. So Jazakallah khair to everybody. I hope that was of benefit to you, inshallah. If you have any further questions, by all means, feel free to reach out to me, wherever. Um, you can go on my website, darulfiqh.com, on social media, on Twitter, anything like this, feel free. Most importantly, you have local ulama, local muftis, mashallah. In the area where you are, there's so many ulama, so many senior ulama, so many amazing scholars. Benefit from them, benefit from their durus, benefit from their presence. You have excellent muftis also there, so do ask them questions. You have the Darul Ulum there as well, mashallah. Some of my colleagues and beloved friends are there, some excellent muftis, so take benefit from them, and make sure you spend these days, last couple of days, very, very, somebody, a quote that I just read today, that don't count the days, but make the days count. Right? Don't count days, but make the days count. And that's how we should have our approach, where to maximize every single minute of Ramadan, especially these days, these nights. Let's try to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can. This is the best time in the year. It's just an amazing time in the year. These nights are so precious, So let's just maximize on uh, tilawah of the Quran, dua, dhikr, sadaqah, zakat, as much as you can do, and let's change our lives and just keep the final moments of our lives inside all the time, that I want to leave this world in a state which Allah is happy with me. That's why I want to, and that's your goal. That's everything. That's all that matters. That you leave this world, in a state which Allah is happy with you, in a state of ibadah, in a state of ta'ah, in a state of submission, in a state of Islam. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all our ibadat, our siyam, our qiyam, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us death with iman, give us shahada, give us death in Medina Munawwara, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rise us with the Nabiyyin, Siddiqeen, Shuhada, and Salihin, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us enter Jannatul Firdaus without any hisab, without any kitab, without any reckoning, without any accountability. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.